Uh, live.
Is it live now?
You're live.
Well, the upside is there's no one here yet, so I can do this bit. Juan,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
What did you want to start with? I can't see. Oh, I can see this here now. And now we are live. We're live. It's trade deadline day, everyone. It's been nuts. It's been a nuts 24 hours in Los Angeles. It's been nuts. Real quick before we get started, want to send our best wishes out to Tito Francona. Hope you're well, man. Hope you're good. That's one of the good guys in the game. If you didn't hear, he's taking a leave of absence effective immediately for the remainder of the season. So our best wishes out there to Tito. But Juan, what do you make of yesterday? Yesterday was madness. Like, there's just no other way to put it for the entire city of Los Angeles.
Absolutely. I mean, part of me was just actually, when I heard the initial reports that the show pods had gotten Scherzer, I was at that point, I was just like, all right, we should probably just sit pat. I mean, what is the point of burning these prospects if we're not going to get? I mean, maybe Barrios would have been worth it, but it looked very daunting. The fact that we were going to have to face Scherzer, Darvish, and Snell. And there's a good likelihood that we were going to face at least just one of them, because it's looking like we're going to be in the wild card unless the Giants start melting down or the Dodgers start playing better. And especially yesterday, getting shut out wasn't making things any better for the Dodgers. But I will say this. Once it turned and the report was that Scherzer was coming to the Dodgers, to me, what made that deal much better and at least made me feel a lot more comfortable was the fact that Trey Turner was in that deal. You're hoping that Scherzer is 36 years old. You're hoping that the Scherzer the Dodgers get will have the same effect that Verlander had for the Astros in 2017. I'm not going to lie to you, Alonso. I'm really worried with the fact that Scherzer is 36 years old. I'm also worried just that the Dodgers are just snake bit, because it's like, okay, we get Scherzer, and if Scherzer goes down, now what? Now what do we do? So having Trey Turner, I think, just makes me feel a lot better, because that dude can hit, and hopefully his hitting is contagious and will help some of these guys that are just underperforming. You're on mute.
Sorry, that's probably because I was drinking water. I will say this: I feel better about Scherzer after he threw yesterday. I was a little worried about that tricep thing, because tricep can be a whole litany of things, but for him to kind of gone out and done that showcase the way that he did, I felt better about that. But then obviously adding Trey to that deal made it even better. Because I mean, in the grand scheme of things, did the Dodgers give up a lot? Yeah, probably. But I mean, we have to remember they didn't give up Diego Cartaya. They didn't give up Michael Busch. They didn't give up Cody Hose, I think is how you say his name. I apologize if I said it wrong. They didn't give up Bobby Miller. Didn't give up Andy Pages, and didn't give up Brian Peapot. All things considered, that's a worthy, in my opinion, they came out all right. They fleeced him. Because when you see what the Blue Jays had to give up for Barrios, they gave up, the top end of their farm. So I feel a lot better about it. As we kind of go through here this hour, someone asked the question in the thing, why haven't they finalized the trade yet? It's a bit concerning. So let me tell you why I'm not concerned. Max Scherzer has a lot of deferrals on his deal. I think it's 7 years of deferrals. So that was going to complicate the trade no matter where he went, whether it was to the show pods, the Giants, the Yankees, anywhere. And then also they have to formally invoke their 10-5 right to waive it. So those are the two complex things in order to get that deal done. And that's just kind of where it's at. So that's why I'm not overly worried about the deal not being finalized, because even that, most deals that come trade deadline time, they don't get announced until after the deadline anyway as final. So I'm not overly worried about that. But I am curious, for anyone that's watching, I'm kind of curious to who you guys think the Dodgers should aggressively go out and get right now. We were talking about it before we went on the air. Throw it in the chat too, but we can see it in the chat. So if you can throw it in there, we appreciate you guys joining us, especially on such a wild day. But Juan, I'm curious to hear, who do you think the Dodgers should go out and get right now?
Look, I think they still need another starter, because I know that Kershaw is reportedly supposed to pitch next week in the Angels series. So you still you're going to have, even with Scherzer coming in, technically it's 2 bullpen days, because even though Gonsolin did stretch out a little bit more on his last start, technically anytime we see David Price or we see Gonsolin pitching, those are bullpen days. And we just can't keep doing that. So if they can get somebody that can just eat innings, somebody that they can get relatively cheap, which is, I think, kind of hard right now. I'm really, Alonso, I'm just curious with this Nationals thing, if the deferments are the reason why the deal was done the way it was done. Because seeing how everyone else seems to be paying, you mentioned how much the Jays gave up to get Berrios, but the White Sox also gave up a lot to get Kimbrel, and that's a rental. Now, I get it, the White Sox are going for it, and you got to applaud that, but you got to sit there and scratch your head and go, like, what's going on with the Nationals? Does Rizzo just not know what he's doing over there, getting taken advantage of? So I'm assuming the Dodgers are probably going to take a lot of money on in those deferrals, and that's why the Nationals made the deal for those 2 prospects. Right now, I think another starting pitcher would help. A reliever. Now that Kimbrel's gone, is there any other high leverage reliever out there that you can help? I think they must know something about Knebel. Corey Knebel has made a couple of appearances in the minors, and he's pitched pretty well. I myself feel a little nervous about that, because the guy is coming back from an injury. I don't know if you can expect him to pitch the way he pitched at the beginning of the season. Right. But if Knebel does come back and he pitches like he was pitching at the beginning of the season, that's your trade piece right there. Because now you're going to have Knebel, Trinan, and Jansen at the end of games.
I find it interesting that you bring up another starter, because we have to not forget that the Dodgers also acquired Danny Duffy yesterday, and so they have another starter waiting in the wings right now. Granted, he's injured, so that's the issue that we're running into at the moment, and he's probably 3 to 4 weeks out. But it's one of those things where they have that depth that the Dodgers so much like. Speaking of starters, J.A. Happ just was acquired by the Cardinals from the Twins, so that's another starter off of the board. I think who the Dodgers should go out and get right now is Raciel Iglesias, because they need that bullpen arm, they need that help. Andrew Heaney would be a nice addition. I just don't know if it's a necessary addition, if that makes sense. Just because they have, at the end of the day, they have their 5, and then they still have Tony, and they still have David Price, even with an injured Danny Duffy. So I'm gonna be super curious to see what they do kind of in that spectrum. And the other thing is I mean at the end of the day, I think the reason that deal went down the way that it did is I ultimately think Max Scherzer, and this is kind of how I've gathered it. I haven't heard anything, haven't done any of that jazz. This is just my assumption, is that he wanted to get the best package possible for the Nationals since they're rebuilding. And, obviously when you're in a position where you could waive a no trade, or you're a 10-5 guy and you can pick where you go, especially when you're leaving an organization that, did what they did for him, wouldn't surprise me if that's what the outcome was as far as why that went down the way that it did. Because the Rays I know have all the assets in the world, so they could have done a better deal than that. And the Padres, I don't know what the Padres offered. That I don't know, but I do know that they could have gotten more, I guess is what I'm getting at. And especially when you include a Trey Turner. I mean, granted, Keibert Ruiz and JoJo are those are solid pieces, right? Those have the potential to be a good building block. But for them to have gone out and done that deal the way they did, that's more of a telltale thing for me as far as that goes on that end. Someone said Kenta in the chat. I actually agree with that because I don't think Kenta would be a crazy expensive option to go out and acquire. By the way, to one point that you made, Juan, Craig Kimbrell is not a rental because they have another year of control of it.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be a free agent in 23.
So that would explain the high price tag on him then.
Yes, yeah. So and even at that, I'm actually surprised. It's just that's all it was, right? I know that there's a lot of buzz around the bazooka. I'm surprised by that, if I'm honest with you, just because his ERA hasn't been great, but he still throws casual 100. So if there is, I guess, a move that could involve another centerpiece, it could be Brewstar. I know they're kind of reluctant to move on from him, but if the right deal comes about, I could definitely see them doing that. But at the moment, let's see. I was just actually going back to this text. Scherzer Turner mega deal is getting done, and the details are being worked out, which is those deferrals, and they'll be on their way for the 4 prospects. So it's close. It's incoming. So I was never worried about that. Again, it's just when you have 7 years of deferrals, it makes it a little difficult for everyone to do that. I know, Juan, I know you have a slight investment with the Chicago White Sox. What do you think of that move?
Hey, good for them, man. I mean, nobody's really talking about the White Sox in the American League. I mean, it's been dominated by the Astros and the Red Sox. But right now, if you sit there and you look, I think those American League playoffs are going to be very, very exciting. I mean, the White Sox they're close to, I think, I don't know what their record. I feel like they're close to almost like 20 games over 500. Yes, the American League Central is not really a powerhouse. Okay, so the White Sox are 17 games over 500 right now. Mm-hmm. They're quietly, that bullpen, you're going to have Hendricks and Kimbrel at the end of the game. And so in the playoffs, things can go sideways late in the innings. So I applaud the White Sox for going for it. And I applaud any of these teams that are going all in. When it was being reported earlier on that the show pods had gotten Scherzer, you don't want to see your rival load up, right? But right. I applaud that those guys are going all in for it. I am curious to see, because all these trades that the show pods have made in the past, they haven't really given up any of their stars in their farm system. And that's why they have the best farm system in the league, right? So I'm curious if they did want to put in their top stars in for this deal. And I'm curious to see if Scherzer maybe killed it. If Scherzer was the one, because as you mentioned, he is a 10-5 guy. Maybe Scherzer wanted all along to go to the Dodgers, or maybe it was because the Nationals were like, okay, we're going to throw in Turner. Maybe, I don't know. The show pods at this point, I think with some of the moves, the show pods had gotten Adam Frazier. So if Trey Turner goes to the show pods, where do they put him? I mean, you move Grisham? Do you move Grisham out of center field and put Turner out there in center field? Because Turner's not playing shortstop, and you can't have him play second base because you have Frazier and Cronenworth. It sounds like Cronenworth is going to get moved over to first base. So I just, Andrew Friedman, man, this guy, he just, every year, this guy just shows out and shows up and shows out. The thing that's really interesting to me about Friedman, the only prospect that you could say, and I don't even know if you can even call him a prospect because he was contributing in the major leagues,
right,
was Verdugo. He traded Verdugo, but we got Mookie Betts and we got a World Series out of that. So in order to get a quality player like Mookie, you had to give up something else. But other than that, all these other prospects that they've traded away, I haven't heard anything about them. Friedman has not made a Pedro Martinez trade. He hasn't made a Konerko trade. The guys that he has let go have turned out not to be, anything special. Keibert may turn out to be something special, but if the Dodgers win the World Series again, I think it's worth it. So I really admire teams that are going for it. That's what, as a fan, that's what you want. You want your team to go all in because as we saw in the NBA this year, you don't know what's going to happen. Injuries can change everything.
Well, and let's just be 100% clear. That move yesterday the Dodgers made, that's not a move that you make unless you are trying to win again. That's straight up what it is. That's a move to repeat and or put yourself, I guess, in the best position where you can to repeat again. And that, I feel like that's getting lost in the fold because people are like, that's it. That's all we're getting. It's like, okay, you went out and got the best pitcher available and arguably, a top 5 shortstop in the game, right? Because Trevor Story is, and we'll dive into that in a little bit here with the Rockies, but the Trevor Story is allegedly available. Javi Baez just moved. Trey Turner is right there, I feel like, with Javi Baez. So, and the difference between Javi Baez and Trey Turner is Trey Turner can play more positions than Javi. But Javi could obviously play second, he could play third, but Trey Turner can play out in the outfield as well. That's where and if we know anything about Andrew Friedman's going to go acquire a player that gives you options. And Friedman loves options. And now you have those options. And that's also why you acquire a Danny Duffy. Because Danny Duffy gives you options as well in that rotation. So
let me stop you right there. The Danny Duffy thing that you just talked about.
Sure.
Getting Danny Duffy, does that mean that they are out of the Cole Hamels sweepstakes? Because if they signed Hamels, wouldn't he be ready around the same time that Danny Duffy would be ready?
I don't know. I mean, Cole Hamels, let's be 100% honest. Both Danny Duffy and Cole Hamels are going to be inexpensive options. However, I don't know if Cole Hamels is going to try to get like $10 million for the rest of the season. You know what I mean? Because his whole thing is someone, the reporting was, he didn't want to sign with anyone because he hadn't found an adequate offer. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what his number is. I don't know what he's, obviously he's not going to make $30 million this year. So it's one of those things where, and he wants to go to a contender. So I don't know. But I also, if I were to, knowing Andrew Friedman, I would be willing to bet that it doesn't necessarily eliminate them from there, because if it's an appealing piece for Friedman and its options, I don't see why not. The issue is who do you move off the roster for that move? Because obviously there have to be subsequent moves. I don't really see any viable candidates right now unless it's for a trade. And so that's why if I were to say that, if I were to assume what Andrew's thinking, I'm thinking he's trying to trade something to offset that, because that's a better problem to have than to try to, kick someone off the roster. But that's Andrew Friedman though. Andrew Friedman loves himself some options. Andrew Friedman is a savage, because obviously yesterday, I wish I could just have been a part of those conversations with Friedman going to Rizzo. Hey, I'll give you Kiebert and JoJo, and then you pick 2 other random guys. That's kind of what it feels like they did, and here we are. But and I'm sorry. Oh no, never mind. That is not final. But listen, the White Sox going for it, quietly having a great season. The Braves putting together a nice roster again. That's kind of what's the madness of MLB trade deadline, is you see out of these these deals that come out of nowhere that you don't expect. Surprisingly though, and we'll dive into it a little more, but I know that they're a division rival. The Giants have been very quiet, very, very quiet, and I'm kind of surprised by that because of how many guys they've been linked to, and obviously. Both the Padres and the Giants have to counter a move at some point because the Dodgers just got better.
Well, but the whole report was that the Giants were willing to give up Joey Bart. If the Giants were willing to give up Bart, and there's no takers for him, then is maybe the Giants farm system just not that good, and they don't have the assets to make deals? The one thing that is surprising is that Chris Bryant is still a Cub as of this time right now. It is 12:25 Pacific Standard Time. So could Chris Bryant end up with the Mets? Could he end up with the Rays? Or could the Giants go ahead and pull that off? Let me ask you this. If Chris Bryant goes to the Giants, is that a difference maker? Because, hey, let's not forget, the Dodgers just lost 2 out of 3 to the Giants.
Right.
And so they have now lost 5 out of 7 in a span of 2 weeks to a first-place team. I can't stress this enough right now. The Dodgers right now are playing for a wild card. So yes, to me, I've already been hearing the hate. I don't know if you guys have been hearing it. The Dodgers are a super team. They just go out there and they buy all this. And yes, these are great moves that they're making. Adding Max Scherzer and adding Trey Turner to your team, I don't know how that wouldn't make anyone happy. But at the same time, I'm sitting there asking myself, the Dodgers have to get Max Scherzer and they have to catch and get Trey Turner in order to catch the Giants. And then I look at the Giants and I'm still scratching my head. How is this team doing this? How are the Giants playing so much? They're just playing completely over their head.
Well, and I mean, Johnny Cueto doing what he did yesterday, he's been having him. So, I mean, full disclosure, I mean, we all thought that he was hurt. And then, because we hadn't heard that name in a while. And then he comes out and throws a gem against the Dodgers yesterday. So it's, again, it's one of those, it's just one of those years, man. We've talked about it a bunch on the podcast that the Dodgers are probably snake bitten. And, but I mean, these two acquisitions in Trey Turner and Max Scherzer, your run-of-the-mill organization that isn't the Dodgers. And the reason I say it that way is because there's not a lot of organizations that have the depth that the Dodgers do. Corey Seager's being activated tonight, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
So, what's interesting about all of that, though, is that trade automatically just, every organization would be, hey, shoot that vibe directly into my veins and all of that jazz. But for the Dodgers, the crazy, preposterous thing about them is this is kind of a move that was expected on them, right, on their behalf. And so it's one of those things where, yeah, it's going to give a nice jolt to that clubhouse because that clubhouse needs it. But this is a move, again, that you only make if you know that you are trying to just go for it and do the thing. And there's no other way to put it. So for people to say, oh, they gave up a lot, et cetera, Keibert wasn't going to break through to the majors with this iteration of the Dodgers right now. Let's establish that right away. Josiah Gray is a great pitching prospect, no bones about it. No one can deny it. However, he also is not ready for a spot in this rotation right now. And what the Dodgers need is someone that's ready to be able to get them to the postseason. That's not a knock on JoJo. That's not a knock on his stuff because we've seen him pitch in person. He's got great stuff. But what the Dodgers need to do right now, because they're only 3 back, they're trying to either win the division or get in the wild card. As we learned with the irony of the Washington Nationals in 19, you just need to win and get it. And that, I mean, if this move doesn't try to inject that sort of a mentality into this team, then I don't know what does. But the Giants, though, they've been quiet today. They've been talking to the Rockies about Trevor Story. I know they've been trying to kick the tires on Chris Bryant, and there's 40-ish minutes, 30 minutes left in the deadline, and I'm still, regardless, because Farhan is a pretty aggressive guy, I'm still 1,000% surprised that they have not made a move of some kind.
Well, I think maybe it's starting to get a little. I'm really curious to see. They have not announced the who the Mets gave up to get Baez, correct?
Not that I've seen yet.
Because it does seem like the prices have been high, and maybe that's the reason why deals are that the Giants have not been making them.
Pete Crow Armstrong, the Mets' number 5 prospect, is who they gave up for Javi and for Trevor Williams. I mean, let's be honest. The reason that the Cubs are having this fire sale, they're just blowing it up, is in part because they're not going to be able to lock up all of these guys. They're not going to lock up Javi. They're not going to lock up Chris and Bryant, and that's why they're moving on from these guys. For our producer Roger, Brian is getting logged on. Brian Kilpatrick of Mile High Sports, getting ready to join us here in a couple minutes. He covers the Rockies. That's his beat. But it's going to be interesting to see because also the Rockies, of all the teams that should be aggressive with the things that they can get back, they've not been aggressive. So I'm pleasantly surprised that also the Padres have not been aggressive as well. Say that again, Roger. I'm sorry.
The Scherzer deal is done. Just announced.
Scherzer's official?
Yeah, Jeff passed.
There it is. Scherzer deal is done. So the Dodgers will be sending out the tweet here shortly. So there it is. Max Scherzer, Trey Turner are Los Angeles Dodgers.
And I just want to add, if things line up the way I think they're going to line up, Scherzer's probably going to start the Wednesday game against the Astros.
Right.
And the Bleed Lows podcast will be at that game.
Well, it's either going to be Tuesday or Wednesday game. He's lined up for Tuesday, but with the trade, it could be
though.
It could be Wednesday.
Buehler,
yeah.
Buehler, if they push Buehler back to Wednesday, that's going to be almost like 7 days.
Yeah, but he'll be pitching against the Astros.
So you think you're going to go Scherzer Buehler as opposed to Buehler Scherzer?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think he will pitch that series, but I mean, I don't know how they're going to swap. We'll put him in there.
Dusty Baker gets to face Max Scherzer again. Pain directly to the face. And the Dodgers have will be activating Corey Seager. That just came down the pipe. Josh Harrison and Yan Gomez go to the A's from the Nationals as the Nationals fire sale continues. Man, what a crazy turn of events with the Nationals just blowing it up. And poor Juan Soto. We've talked about Juan Soto, who's a perennial MVP candidate. We talked a ton about him, and now he's solo. I think he's the only guy that's left from the 2019 team now at this point.
Well, you know what? I'm really curious to see how all these trades do pan out, because the Mets are in a very not in a very good division, and the Nationals are just completely blowing everything up. The Mets only have a 3.5 game lead over the Phillies, and the Phillies made some moves today. The Phillies got Kyle Gibson and then Ian Kennedy. So the Phillies can make the move. The Braves have a softball outfield now, so their whole strategy is just to go ahead and hit 3-run home runs. So, and the Braves are only 4 games out. To me, what's so interesting, the way the National League playoffs are lining up, the Brewers have been kind of quiet. I know they made some small moves today.
Right.
But the Mets and the Brewers are probably just sitting there going, this is going to be great, because the way things are lining up now, the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Padres are going to have to go through each other to get to either the Mets or the Brewers. So I don't know if maybe the Brewers felt, I don't know what the Brewers farm system looks like.
Right.
But maybe the Brewers are just like, we don't need to make moves because all we got to do is just beat the Mets. With the Mets getting Baez now, and if Lindor comes back, and they have Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom is the ultimate wild card, right? Because that guy, in a short series, you're going to see him twice. He can steal 2 wins for you. So I just find it very interesting, because if the Mets, after getting Baez, if the Mets don't pull away in that division, then I just don't know what's going on here. I feel like it's whoever comes out of the West is going to represent the National League.
I'm speaking of the National League West. We're about to be joined by Brian Kilpatrick of Mile High Sports. If you're not following him on the Twitter machine, please go follow him at Rocky Mountain BK on Twitter. He's a dear friend as well. Unfortunately, he's a Rockies apologist, but he'll be joining us here in a second. But I am surprised, though, that up to this point at least, and I don't see anything and I haven't heard anything, the Padres haven't tried to counter that move. And same with the Giants, because the Giants are good and they're legit, but they haven't tried to counter that yet, and here we are, and that's kind of one of the reasons we wanted to have Brian on, who we'll bring on in a second. Roger, let me know when we can do that.
Brian's on. Hey, Brian. Can you hear us?
Hey, Kilpat, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us on short notice.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be on.
So your Colorado Rockies, who are your beat, they've been surprisingly quiet, and I know the reporting has been that the Rockies were not going to move on from John Gray. They were not going to move on from Trevor Story, in part because of how the Nolan Arenado situation went down earlier in the year. What can you tell us that you're hearing right now?
Well, it does sound like they're still listening on Trevor Story, and in fact, they are in active discussions with the Giants right now, per multiple reports. It's just a matter of whether the Rockies' price will come down, because it's said to be fairly astronomical for a rental player, even one of Story's caliber. But the news on John Gray seems to be correct, that the Rockies think that he might accept a qualifying offer in the offseason, and that they might even be able to sign him long term, which, I have mixed feelings about. But it just kind of speaks to more of the Rockies' long-standing philosophy of kind of just sticking to what they know. They don't really want to depart too much from what they're already familiar with. You've seen that the last couple of days in trades that they've made to regain players who were traded away in the previous year. So that's kind of where the Rockies sit right now.
How astronomical is the ask from the Rockies? More astronomical than Keibert and JoJo?
Well, yeah, but I mean, Trevor Story's not Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, so
right.
I don't think it's quite to that level. My guess is the Rockies are probably trying to pry Joey Bart away from the Giants, and I don't know what other players they've discussed with other teams, but if that price doesn't come down a little bit, Story's not going to get moved, and the Rockies seem to be okay with that. So that could be a little bit of a bluff from the organization, but they've said the weeks leading up to the trade deadline that they're not a farm system for other teams, and that they're not just going to give players away, and they'd be fine settling for a compensation pick, and that they've acquired this player and that player and whatever in compensation rounds or in the second round. So they're comfortable in their ability to get an impact player in a slot like that in the draft. But it seems to me that it's better if you know your value, if you know the value of the player you're getting, which can be done easier in a trade rather than in a draft.
Hey, Brian, it's Juan. Quick question. So why are the Rockies open to dealing with the Giants in the division when it seems like they wouldn't be open to be dealing with either the Show Pods or the Dodgers?
It's a good question. I think the Giants were the last team that the Rockies dealt with in somewhat of a major trade. They've done some minor ones with the Dodgers over the years, and possibly even with the Padres too. But the last trade that featured big league players that the Rockies made within the division was with the Giants back when they traded Marco Scutaro to San Francisco in 2012. So I don't know, and obviously that was a completely different Giants and Rockies front office, so I don't know why they're willing to deal with the Giants, other than maybe they don't think the Giants' contention window matches that of the Padres and Dodgers, and so I don't think the Rockies want to do a whole lot to help those teams out. But in my opinion, I mean, it looks like the Giants are going to have a lot of resources beginning this offseason, a lot of money to spend. So I wouldn't necessarily say that, their window's closing any quicker than anyone else's.
Not to pile on the Rockies.
Oh,
fans.
I see what you did there, pylon. Okay.
Yeah. So if they stand pat, which I mean, it could go either way, because as you said, the Rockies, do what they do. How do you think that goes down with John Gray? Do you think that they can actually lock him up?
Oh, I'm sure they can. Yeah, I mean, they've got at least a little bit of money to spend, and I don't know what kind of contract Gray's going to get. He's not I don't even know if he's a $100 million pitcher at this point, because he's about to turn 30. He's for the Rockies and their unique circumstances and their ballpark that they have to play half their games in. He's a good pitcher, but when you're talking league-wide value, slot him in anywhere else, I don't know that he's better than a good number 3, right? So I'm sure they can re-sign him, and he's made it, very clear that he wants to be with the Rockies. He wants to stay in purple. He said as much I think it was last night. So he wants to be there. I'm sure they can re-sign him. The question is, should they, given what we know about the entire history of the Rockies and how quickly their players start to break down once they've spent 5, 6, 7 years playing at Coors Field.
What do you take? What is your takeaway from the blockbuster of all blockbusters now being finalized? And obviously it's putting everyone in the division on notice.
I mean, did people in the division need to be on notice? It's the Dodgers. Like, they've just won a World Series. They've been the best team in the National League for 5 years at least. So sure, they put people on notice, but I don't really know that they didn't put the division on notice. They put the rest of baseball on notice. The Dodgers are going to go to the postseason regardless, and if they weren't going to win the division, it was because the Giants were fluky good, not because the Dodgers are bad or anything less than what they actually are, which is elite. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, when I saw Passan report that yesterday, my first reaction was, this has to be a fake account. This isn't the real one, right? Because, but at the same time, that's just kind of me being humorous, because I'm not surprised that the Dodgers swooped in and not only got Max Scherzer, but also Trey Turner. So, I mean, were you guys surprised? I highly doubt it.
I will say I was surprised. So, I mean, I jokingly said to these guys that they were going to go out and get, Keibert, or I'm sorry, they were going to go out and get Trey and Scherzer for Keibert and Gonsolin, right? I jokingly said that, I think, on Monday. And then fast forward to yesterday, and it's like, oh, shit, it happened. And it just happened like that out of nowhere. And then my favorite part of that interaction for that whole transaction is when you actually text me. All you text me is LOL. And then the next text is the tweet that the Dodgers are close to acquiring Max Scherzer and Trey Turner from the Nationals. But it's one of those where I honestly was surprised, too, because the reporting was at the time that the Padres were about to acquire Max Scherzer.
Yep.
Hey, Brian, just out of curiosity, was it close at all? Were the Dodgers in on Nolan Arenado in the offseason? And if they were, would they have given them a better deal than what the Cardinals gave them?
The Rockies absolutely did not want to trade Nolan Arenado to the Dodgers. I never heard that those discussions went anywhere beyond preliminary, and I think that's because if the Rockies were going to trade with the Dodgers, they were going to make the Dodgers pay a premium. But it's funny because, as it turned out, the Rockies didn't get any of the Cardinals' top 10 prospects. The best player in the deal right now looks to be Austin Gomper, who's actually been really good for the Rockies when he's been healthy. He spent some time on the IL, but the Dodgers would have had to pay a premium. They might. I think the Rockies, from what I heard, I think the Rockies asked for Gonsolin, Ruiz, and Lux from the Dodgers. They wanted the Dodgers to pay a premium. And they got nowhere near that from the Cardinals and gave the Cardinals $50 million. So I don't know. Jeff Breidish was in cahoots with, is it Mozeliak, who's the Cardinals GM? I forget. Yeah. I know he's still with the organization. I just wasn't sure if he was one of those guys who took a larger role or whatever. But that trade is still confusing to this day because the Rockies lost all of their leverage by, word getting out that Arenado was unhappy and was getting treated like shit and this and that. They didn't do a very good job controlling that message. They lost all their leverage, and what they ended up with was what they ended up with.
So, we were just talking about this earlier, seeing the price tags for the especially how much the White Sox gave up for Kimbrel. At this point, how much the Blue Jays gave up for Berrios. What's the reaction over there in Denver when they see other teams are going for it, and then your team is making deals that are just driving the fans, leaving them scratching their heads?
No one's surprised. I mean, it's the Rockies have a very clear formula. If you'll notice, they're 33-20 at home this season, and I think they're now 11-39 on the road after last night. They win games at home. They've got 10 walk-off wins. They look like a really good team at home. People love to come to the ballpark. It's one of the best ballparks in baseball. They sell a lot of beer. They sell a great experience, and it keeps the owner, with enough money in his pockets to have vanity real estate projects like the one that they built across the street from Coors Field. That just opened here within the last few weeks. So that's that's the Rockies formula. Keep people coming to the ballpark. Hell, if you want to get 40,000 Dodger transplant fans in the ballpark too, then that doesn't hurt. So, which, we've seen that several times over the last few years where Dodgers fans have outnumbered Rockies fans 3-1 probably. But that's the Rockies formula, and that formula doesn't require spending a ton of money on free agents. It doesn't require spending a ton of money on an analytics department like the Dodgers do. It doesn't require spending a ton of money on player development. It's just, draft some players, develop them, bring them up, have them win some games at Coors Field, and that's that. So nobody's surprised seeing what all these other teams are doing and seeing just how badly the Rockies screwed up their very brief window of contention.
I will say, when I saw that trade come through yesterday, the Scherzer to LA deal, immediately I thought of you because I knew the pain was incoming, right? But then when I saw the reaction to Rocky's Twitter, it was far worse than I thought it was going to be. Yankees have acquired Andrew Heaney.
Wow, the Angels turned into sellers all of a sudden, huh?
They did. I do know that they inquired about Scherzer, but that was never going to happen. They've made Raciel Iglesias available.
Yes.
That's actually an arm that I wouldn't be upset if the Dodgers acquired.
Oh, Iglesias? Oh, God, I'm sure they will.
I just like your optimism, Brian. I love your optimism.
By the way, if the Giants don't make another move, if the show pods are done, how do you see the rest of this race ending up this year?
Dodgers win the NL West by 10 games.
You still think so, even though they've been completely inconsistent? The injuries have just torn them apart. You still think they can catch the Giants? And
listen, what's Cody Bellinger's slash line right now?
It's preposterous.
Well, he's hitting like 150.
And they're 30 games, 25 games. How much are they? 25 games over?
No, they're
500?
20 games. You're giving them too much credit. You're giving them too much credit.
It doesn't matter. They're going to be 30 games over 500 eventually. So that's just one thing you look at right there. Can you imagine if, Trevor Story's been bad this year, but can you imagine if Trevor Story, just, for the sake of comparison, he's the Rockies' best player. Bellinger is one of the Dodgers' 10 best players, which would make him the best player on 27 other teams in the league. Can you imagine if Trevor Story hit 150 with a 200 slugging percentage or wherever the hell it is Bellinger's hitting? How much worse the Rockies would be, and yet Bellinger's doing this, and the Dodgers are still 20 games over 500. So that should tell you guys all you need to know.
Well, and we've talked about it. I mean, any other team, even the Yankees, even the Red Sox, any other team, if they had the injury woes that the Dodgers have with one or two of their marquee guys, their season's probably over.
Yeah.
But the Dodgers, because of the preposterous depth that they have, they've still been able to weather the storm. And let's not forget, they lost Trevor Bauer. That's incoming. And so it's one of those things where it's good to go. Brian, I know you got to run. If you hear anything on Trevor's story being moved, please let me know.
I will.
Because I know the incoming pain, the looming pain will happen. But before I let you go, before we set you loose, what's your prediction? Do they move Trevor's story, yay or nay?
I think they're going to move him. And keep in mind, guys, I'm sure you know this, but we're going to see news of deals leaking in for an hour after the trade deadline, too.
Yeah.
So we may not see it in the next 10 minutes, but we may see it in the next hour or 10 minutes. But I do think they're going to move him because there were other reports, too, saying that the Rockies' asking price has started to drop, and that was within the last hour or so. So I do think Story ends up getting moved, but that's probably it. I don't think any other Rockies get moved, which is crazy because they've got players on that roster who shouldn't be playing on a team that has no chance of contending. They need to be doing all they can to get what they can for guys like C.J. Cron and Daniel Bard, etc. But I think Story's the only guy who gets moved.
And you know what? You're 100% right. They definitely should. I mean, similar to the Nats and the Cubs should be having a fire sale, but here we are.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, thanks for joining us for a few minutes, man. Again, follow him at Rocky Mountain BK. He's a beat writer for Mile High Sports. Go check his shit out. He's good people, great writer, and his Twitter is also a solid follow. So please give him a follow.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
see it.
I was not expecting a Haney trade during the last little bit. The Astros have traded Miles Straw to the Indians.
So can we still call them the Indians for just this year, or do we just need to start calling them the Guardians now?
The Marvel universe has not accepted them yet, so I don't know if we can call them that.
The Guardians of Cleveland.
Guardians of Cleveland. Listen, I still think that was such a bad move, man. Like, they should have gone with the Spiders.
Yeah, absolutely. They had the Spiders right there. The Spiders right there, and they blew it.
They could have called the stadium the Spiderweb, the merch. Like, I'm not, my wife isn't fond of spiders, but even she's like, yeah, they should have gone with Spiders. Like, that's dumb. And I know, if I'm not mistaken, there was an old team there that was called the Spiders back in the day. So they could have kind of relived all of that. But I digress. I'm just a guy on a podcast. If you're just joining us, thank you for joining us. It's the Bleed Lows podcast, kind of. We're live streaming the trade deadline. We're going to be here with you for a little while. We've been, it's your boys Alonso and Juan, Babyface Gimmick, and this guy Roger. The Yankees of New York are trading for Andrew Haney in a deal with the Angels. That's coming through right now. Just like Brian, if you missed it, Brian Kilpatrick of Mile High Sports, he just joined us, is talking. There's going to be a litany of deals that come through in the next little bit. But the big one for Dodger fans, that's where we are, the Los Angeles Dodgers have officially acquired Max Scherzer and Trey Turner for Keibert Ruiz and Josiah Gray and two other prospects. That's still insane that I'm saying that out loud.
I know, absolutely. I am curious, though, if Lux stays with the team. Because I can see Turner playing center field to give Bellinger some time to heal up from his hamstring issue. I can see Trey Turner playing second base. I can see Trey Turner spending some time at shortstop too, because I'm sure they're going to give Corey Seager. He's been, for those of you just joining us, Corey Seager has been activated for tonight's game, so I'm sure they're going to give him some rest. I guarantee you Seager will play today and will rest tomorrow. So
by the way, the deal for Andrew Haney, super light, cash and some minor leaguers.
Some junk.
I mean, here's the thing. Listening to Brian and him talk to me and tell us how the Rockies run their organization. Dodger fans,
right?
You guys need to be so... I get it. You guys are an angry, passionate bunch, and you want the Dodgers to go 162-0 and march through the playoffs to win the World Series. But we do have to acknowledge that this ownership, while it may have some flaws to it, has pretty much been giving the fans what they want. They feel the competitive team every year. I just think it's horrible.
Breaking news.
Chris Bryant to the San Francisco Giants.
Oh, boy.
It's happening.
Oh, boy.
If they acquire Trevor Story as well, that's going to be insane. That is happening right now. Chris Bryant to the rivals to the north, Los Nortes. Chris Bryant to the Giants. I'm not surprised by that because I know they've been kicking those tires for a minute, but I'm curious to see what the Cubs get back, because if the Rockies are trying to get Bart from them for Trevor, then I wonder what they got for Bryant.
So here's the thing. The Dodgers only have 3 more games against the Giants.
Right.
I believe the show pods and the Giants go at each other either 9 or 10 times.
Something like that, yeah. I think it's like 10 more.
So at this point, who do you want to beat up on each other? I mean, a 5-5 split, or would you rather have one team dominate over the other? Because the Dodgers have, I think, 10 meetings coming up with the show pods pretty soon, don't they?
Well, and let me tell you this. I will say I've disagreed with even the great and powerful Brian Kilpatrick on the Giants' flukiness. I think they're for real. I don't think that they're just a fluke. I don't think it's just one of those, like I've seen Dodger fans say that it's, sorry, someone was texting me about that Brian deal. That it's just like a fluke because of their roster. I mean, they still have some ballers over there. They have Brandon Belt. They have Brandon Crawford. Alex Wood has been throwing the ball really well, aside from those 2 times where he hit Justin Turner and Max Muncy earlier last week. That bullpen has been legit. And now they add Chris Bryant, and then obviously, as Brian was just telling us, they're trying to acquire Trevor Story. That has the opportunity to be legit. And, I mean, at the end of the day, anyone who was acquiring Chris Bryant, I think, was going to obviously enhance and improve their offense. That's an improvement, and that's an aggressive move because they know what the Dodgers just did too.
Oh, it's going to get really, really interesting. I mean, if they do add also Trevor Story. Now, you had mentioned this earlier, Alonso, that the Cubs were asking for a haul for Chris Bryant. So I am curious to see how much the Giants gave up to get Chris Bryant. Do you think they have enough to pull off a trade for Bryant and for Trevor Story?
If the Rockies are coming down and they're asked for Trevor, then I don't see why not. Because at the end of the day, I would be blown away if they don't move on from Trevor Story, because that dude has made it clear to that organization that he's not going to re-sign after how they handled the Nolan thing. And if their front office is okay with just accepting compensatory picks for a Trevor Story, that's insane to me. If anything, that's going to piss your organization off, or I'm sorry, your fan base off even more. I'm trying to find out what the package is for Mr. Bryant, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Well, we talked about it on the Bleed Lows podcast. So for those of you who are just discovering us, make sure to listen to our podcast. You can catch up on all 28 episodes between now and when the Dodger game starts tonight. But we talked about this on our most recent episode where the Giants and the show pods were going to get better, and the Dodgers had to do something in order to stand pat. What I find really interesting is when we sit here are talking about the Dodgers, or when we talk to other Dodger fans, it's all doom and gloom. This team sucks. And then when we talk to people outside of LA, they all say, look, the Dodgers are going to win that division. The Dodgers are going to win that division comfortably. I'm just curious, maybe is it because we watch this team every day? I'm just curious as to what those other people see that we are just not taking into account.
San Diego made a move.
Who did? I'm sorry?
San Diego.
What did they do?
Former Astro Jake Marisnick.
That's not a bad move for them. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, both the Giants and the Padres, we were talking about it a second ago, they were going to have to make some moves no matter what to try to counter what the Dodgers did, because the Dodgers went out and got the best available player as far as a pitcher goes, and then they also happened to get a really good shortstop in Trey Turner. I know that Trey Turner is in that top 10, kind of range. I don't actually know where he ranks, but he's legit. And I mean, the Padres have acquired Daniel Hudson and Adam Frazier officially, and the Giants have acquired Chris Bryant. Meanwhile, the Dodgers have acquired Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, Danny Duffy, and yeah, it's still. I mean, they have to counter that move, right? I'm looking to see if this is true. That is not true, so I'm not going to say that.
Well, one of the other things, Alonso, you had been saying this for a while on the podcast, that the Dodgers were looking for another right-hand bat. Well, There it is. Trey Turner is that right-hand bat. I didn't expect him to get a quality right-hand bat like Trey Turner, but that filled another need or not need, but maybe a desire for them.
Maybe the Padres got Marisnick just because he hit that home run against the Dodgers. They're like, yep, that's the guy. That's the one. Take that guy. Dude, I have to say, so the trade deadline for the last few years has been pretty quiet. This is one of the crazier deadlines that I've seen that I can remember, at least in the last 5 years. But that's why I love baseball, because aside, obviously the big deals that you see, in basketball and even in football, those blockbusters per se, they happen in the off season, right? With the caveat this year being how Harden and Russell Westbrook were moved. But, I mean, the names that are moving during this deadline is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, yes, it's exciting, but at the same time, is it good for baseball to have this number of teams completely blowing things up and having fire sales?
Well, I mean, the unfortunate part that we haven't really had a conversation about is the COVID effect. Last year, a lot of people
There it is. Dodgers official announcement.
It came through.
Yeah, Dodgers just tweeted it.
The Dodgers have acquired. Well, Freddie Galvis is returning to the Phillies. The Los Angeles Dodgers acquired 3-time Cy Young award-winning pitcher Max Scherzer and the 2021 All-Star infielder Trey Turner from Washington Nationals in exchange for catcher Keibert Ruiz, pitchers Josiah Gray, Gerardo Carrillo, and outfielder Donovan Casey. It's official.
I'm still surprised that it just took the fact that they were able to keep basically all those guys. I think some of them, I know a lot of them are in 1A, but I think some of them are in AA. But no Michael Bush in there, no Ryan Pepio, no Miller. And it's the way that this guy, and seeing what other teams are giving up to get the players that they got, I would hate to negotiate with Andrew Friedman.
Finesse-man, you mean? Andrew Finesse-man? By the way, I'm being told the Mets will not have any last-minute deals. So their haul is Javi Baez and Trevor Williams.
I'm curious as to why the Mets turned off of Bryant. The Bryant was the name I kept hearing for the Mets.
Trevor Story is not moving.
I
am surprised by that. I can't wrap my head around that. I'm surprised that Alex Colomé and Greg Holland and Rafael Iglesias, as of right now, have not been moved yet.
Okay, so let's just point out right now. Technically, the deadline is over.
Correct.
We are now 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, but deals can still be reported as long as they got to the front office before the 1 o'clock deadline. So we may still hear some stuff a little bit coming on, but again, the Dodgers did, I think, what they had to do. Now I'm just very curious to see how this team reacts to it, because Mookie's supposed to come back, I think, on Sunday.
That's the plan, I believe, Sunday.
So if they do start getting some of these players back, and with the addition of Turner, I am curious to see if they start hitting, because those of you who listened to our last episode, Alonso called it. What were you worried about going up to San Francisco, Alonso? It was the offense. Game 1, they scored 1 run. And then the game yesterday on Thursday, they got shut out. Now, the Giants, as much as we want to sit here and just scratch our heads, how are they doing it? The Giants had good pitching, so there's probably a reason why the Dodgers struggled to score runs. But sooner or later, they're going to have to find a way to score runs against those teams. And those two teams, the Giants and the Showpods, those are the two teams right now that we know for a fact they're going to face in the playoffs, because they're either going to face the Showpods in the wild card, or they're going to get the winner of the Giants and the Showpods in the first round of the playoffs. So congratulations.
I'm being told that that's it for the Giants. I'm surprised by that. I also have to admit that I'm surprised that the Twins did not move on from Byron Buxton, considering that they were very open about how they were not able to lock him up to an extension in any way. I'm frankly surprised that that's all the Giants are doing, and I mean I think the Padres. A huge thing that I've been told about the Padres is they were trying to offload Eric Hosmer, and no one was taking that deal. I'm still surprised that that's the only move that the only moves that the Padres did as well. Because if there's any move that's the blockbuster of all blockbusters, it's what the Dodgers did yesterday. Because no matter how you look at it, it's not every day that you acquire Max Scherzer and a Trey Turner caliber player in one transaction. So all credit in the world to Andrew Friedman. Andrew Friedman went out and said, okay, what? I'm sure he had a conversation with Stan, and it was like, okay, what can I do? And I'm sure
no word on another bullpen arm.
No word. So, I'm asking, but nothing. Roger, is Juan going to join us by chance?
I haven't heard anything back from him.
Okay, because that's what I would like to ask.
I'll tweet him out.
Okay.
Let's see what he says.
Yeah, no other arms from what I'm seeing and from what I've been told. Jonathan Shoup also remains in Detroit. I'm surprised by that as well. I have to say though, I am surprised that the Rockies are not moving Trevor Story. I'm 1,000%. Like that's one of those that I'm kind of just surprised, but I guess we shouldn't be after the conversation we just had with Brian, that as to how they run that org. But and then second to that is that the Giants and the Padres didn't really have anything to counter what the Dodgers did.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the Giants, you could sit there. I am curious. Okay, so the details haven't been released yet on the Bryant deal, correct?
Correct. No, I'm still.
So I am curious to see if Bart was included in that deal.
Yeah, I'm currently inquiring within on that, but have not been told anything.
And I also wonder how, because it was so late in the deadline, if the Cubs just said, F it, we need to get something for him. We can't just let him walk.
Right.
Because I think some organizations have that mentality, well, let's just get whatever we can get for him. I thought the Twins were going to start having a fire sale. So I like
Wade Jr.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Wade Jr. was probably going to be the odd man out in that outfield.
Correct. But I mean, that's a pretty good haul for the Cubs. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, these are still prospects, right? But I mean, that's still a pretty good haul for them.
Nats moved Lester as well
to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
The St. Louis Cardinals of St. Louis are they're trying to go for it too.
Oh boy.
I mean, listen, man. I mean, at the end of the day, Whit Merrifield stays with the Rays as well. Royals. I'm sorry. That's also kind of surprising. For those of you joining us, the trade deadline passed officially 7 minutes ago. Now the deals that trickle in are the ones that come in after the fact because they were made official during the window. The Rays and the Jays were pushing for Trevor Story, is what I am being told as well. But it sounds like let me ask actually, because that would be.
I had heard the Rays also. I did not hear the Blue Jays, but I had heard the Rays. I am curious as to, with the Yankees getting Rizzo and then also getting Joey Gallo, if that's why they decided to turn away from Trevor Story.
I'm clarifying that sourcing because I was told by one source that he was not moving at all, and another is telling me that the Rays and Jays are pushing for him. So getting clarification on that. I don't know if something was filed after the old or pre-deadline. By the way, I mean, kudos to all the teams that went for it today. The Chicago White Sox are KOing everyone out of nowhere and going out and getting Craig Kimbrell. I did not have the White Sox in. I had not heard the White Sox in the mix. I had none of that. So for them to come out and just get them out of nowhere, I was 1,000% surprised. Is there, as of right now, so if everything holds as is, Juan, I'm kind of curious to hear your take. Who would you say is the biggest disappointment at this deadline as of the moment?
That's a really good question. A lot of these teams, if you look at the division leaders, I feel that they're pretty much. We didn't hear much. I mean, the Red Sox not getting Rizzo, I think he, from what everyone was saying, was a perfect fit with the Red Sox. But
right.
It's hard to argue because the Red Sox are like over 20 games over 500. So it's like they're already a good baseball team. The Astros, well, the moves that the Astros made were for their bullpen, and their offense was already pretty damn good.
Right.
So even though they made smaller moves, I think the word was they were going to be getting Kimbrel, but for them to get the closer out of Seattle, and then they got Yimi Garcia, even though Babyface says he sucks now. Ever since he's been getting checked for the sicky stuff, his numbers have dropped.
Right.
The only team that really scratches my head as to why they weren't more aggressive is the Brewers. But then again, the Brewers are a small market team. I don't know, and it seems like they're very interested in keeping payroll down.
Right.
So maybe they want to keep their farm system intact because they're probably going to be using their farm system. But being that they are going to have a path where they're going to avoid the National League West teams until the NLCS, I would have thought maybe they would have been a little more aggressive just to be able to make sure that they can beat the Mets, because that's who they're looking at.
The Rockies have not traded Trevor Story, so that's official. They did not trade Trevor Story. That would be a super hard fan base to be a part of. I have to say the team that there's two. Even though they just traded for Chris Bryant, the Giants and the Padres. The reason that I find them slightly disappointing as of right now, before anything else is dropped, is the Padres. The Padres had every opportunity to kind of just give the Dodgers that gut shot, if you will, with acquiring even Max Scherzer, and they didn't. So I'm surprised by that, and likewise with the Giants. I mean, the Giants' offense got better, right? And their offense was already really good.
Hey Alonso.
Go ahead.
So JP Hornstra just tweeted saying, "Hearing the Dodgers did not make any last-minute deals after finalizing their trade with the Nationals." So it sounds like that's it.
And I mean, truthfully, even if they didn't go out and get another relief arm, I'm still happy with this because they're bolstering the rotation that needs help. The rotation needs help. At the end of the day, we've talked about it a bunch on the podcast. You can't do these bullpen games anymore because it's taxing to the guys, right? So you go out and you help with a portion of that. You're still going to have one bullpen game from what it sounds like, unless they're doing the whole, David Price is doing what he's doing. But regardless, that roster, with everyone starting to come back, trickle back in, that roster is preposterous. Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger.
Did you guys touch on this package already? The Giant package? Did you guys touch on the Giant package already for Bryant? Joey Bart. Yeah, that seems like a high price. Wade Jr. was a Dodger killer.
So is the reason why they didn't go get another bullpen arm is with Kershaw coming back, you have Scherzer, so you have your 4-man rotation. I'm assuming Gonsolin is going to stay in the starting rotation and Price is going to be the one that goes back into the bullpen. Right. So with Price going back into the bullpen, Knebel is going to be coming back. Do you think that's why they didn't go to get another bullpen arm?
I mean, they must feel they know something about Knebel that we don't know. Hansel Robles has been traded to the Boston Red Sox. They for sure know something that we don't know as far as that end goes for that injury. But they must feel good about it because if we know anything about Andrew Friedman, he would make a move if there was a worry. And they went out. I mean, obviously, again, we've harped on it a bunch. They went out and got the best starting pitcher that's available. Got him. And they were able to get Trey Turner. If they were that worried about the bullpen at this point, I feel like they would have gone out and been aggressive with arms, and they weren't. So, I mean, it's still, even with the depth that the Dodgers still have, they still have Brusdar Graterol. They still have Tony Gonsolin. They still have David Price. They still have Mitch White. Corey Knebel's coming back. They must feel like they're in a good spot, especially after those two moves or the one move they made yesterday in getting Scherzer and Turner.
Yeah, I mean, I still think there is, as encouraging as these moves are, I still think their health is going to be a huge question mark these last 2 months of the season.
Status update. The Cubs receive Alexander Gagnario, number 9 San Francisco prospect, and right-handed pitcher Caleb Killian, number 30, from the Giants for Chris Bryant.
Wait, so Joey Bart's not in the deal?
Apparently not.
And Wade Jr.'s not in the deal?
And Wade Jr. is not, apparently. Someone had said a second ago that Wade Jr. and Bart were in the deal. Now it looks like that is not the case at all.
That's a good deal for the Giants.
It's a great deal for the Giants because, I mean, they give up their number 9 guy and they give up their number 30 guy for Chris Bryant. That's a hell of a deal. Well, good on you, Farhan. that's a hell of a deal. I'm pleasantly surprised. For those of you that are watching, I'm kind of curious to hear your takes on who you guys think were the winners and the losers of the trade deadline. So, if you want to throw in a comment at us, by all means, please throw one on YouTube or on what's the Twitter one called? I always forget what it's called.
Velos Podcast.
The Periscope, sorry. Whatever stream you're watching on, throw a comment in there, and please tell us who you think the biggest winners and the losers are of the trade deadline as of right now. That's a hell of a deal by the Giants. If that is in fact what it is, and that's what it sounds like it is, they got fleeced. There's no other way to put it. They got fleeced. Let's see here. I am trying to find out if that is in fact what it is, just to make sure, because everyone was just reporting that they got Bart, and that's not what it appears to be. That's insane. Farhan with he must be sitting in a robe somewhere like Andrew Friedman.
Well, now I'm curious to see what this does to the Giants offense, because it seems like in the last 2 weeks, the only team the Giants could beat is the Dodgers.
Right.
So if the Giants start beating teams outside, the Dodgers are 3 games back. And as I said, they only have 3 more games against the Giants for the rest of the year.
The Braves made another move.
Who did they acquire, Roger?
Jorge Solar from the Royals.
Wow, that's a move. Listen, the Braves, if there's a winner that isn't the Dodgers, the Braves have quietly put together a nice team there. Their pitching still needs a little work, but they got Jock, they got Adam Duvall, they got Rosario, and now they got Soler.
Yeah, the Braves very quietly, making moves. To be now, to me, the Braves right now are 8 games out of the wild card. The Reds are 5 games out of the wild card. So teams like the Phillies and the Braves, are they just playing to try to win their divisions? Because these moves that the Braves are making, I don't know if it's enough for them to go ahead and get into the wild card, because if the Show Pods and the Dodgers play 500 for the rest of the way, I still think they're going to end up winning the wild card. The Reds are 7 games out of the Brewers in the Central, so I know the Reds made some moves. I'm just really curious if they feel that is enough, unless the Show Pods have a meltdown, which I just don't see coming. I'm very curious as to, and maybe these moves are just not costing the Braves a lot of players. Adam Duvall, even though he kills the Dodgers, he might help them, and that's why I'm curious if the Mets, after getting Javi Baez, if the Mets still can't pull away from that division. In that division, September is going to be very, very interesting in the National League East. Which again makes me go, Brewers, you guys could have had something.
Well, and the NL East is wide open. The Braves are only 4 back. The Phillies are 3.5 back, and then you got the Mets there. In comparison to the NL West, the Dodgers are 3 back and the Padres are 5.5 back, but all 3 of those teams have 60 wins, right? In the NL East, it's 54, 51, and 51. So they're closer to 500 than anything. It's wide open. The wild card in the NL is going to be super fun this year as well, assuming that, because we have to remember there's the 2 wild cards. So if it ends up standing pat as is, that means the Dodgers and the Padres would go in for the wild card, right? But if the Dodgers pull away, then it could be the Giants and the Padres. It could also be, a couple of those teams that we just mentioned, including the Cincinnati Reds, who they went out and made a couple moves as well. And they got Luis Cessa from the Yankees, he's a pretty good little electric arm. But the team that I'm surprised that didn't make a whole lot of moves is the Rays. But at the same time, the Rays are kind of conservative with stuff. They're also will throw people out of nowhere. in the sense of the Blake Snell trade. No one had that on their radar, and it came about the way that it did. But man, the NL East, the Yankees making some moves, which I was surprised by them doing that because they're, I think, 8.5 back, something like that, 9. And they went out and got Joey Gallo. They went out and got Mr. Rizzo. And I feel like the reason they got Rizzo instead of the Red Sox, I feel like that was just kind of like a, hey, you're not going to take him. Like, we're not going to let you get better kind of move.
Yeah. Yeah, it is curious to see how many of these moves were also defensive moves to keep these players from other. I mean, the fact that they were able to get Scherzer and Turner for what they gave up, Andrew Friedman again. I don't know if you can say a bad thing about him.
Andrew Finesman. And to clarify, so someone had said in one of the in the streams that the Giants were the losers if they gave up Bart and Wade Jr., but that's not who they gave up. That we've been informed otherwise, that it was not Bart and Wade, and that, I mean, then that takes them losing off of the table. I mean, that's a hell of a deal by Farhan. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I mean, that's a huge win for them. But again, and by the way, let's not forget too, the Mets also acquired Rich Hill. So not only did they get Javi Baez, but they also got Rich Hill. But the Cubs are receiving Alexander Canario and Caleb Killian from the Giants for Chris Bryant. That's a hell of a finesse.
Oh, it's going to get really, really interesting, folks. Here we go. We're now starting to get into the dog days of summer. The Astros are coming into town next week.
By the way, if you listen to our podcast, we have a super dope interview that's coming that's related to that will be dropping on Monday.
Oh, that is true.
Small tease. And if you're not subscribed or following any of our socials, please follow them at the Bleed Los Podcast, and you'll see what that is all about on Monday. But that's an interesting one because we dive into the Astro scandal a little bit with a guest. But you're right. It's about to get super interesting because we also can see Scherzer as early as Tuesday.
Well, that's the other question I was going to ask you guys. Do we know the situation with Turner in terms of the COVID? How long he's going to be out and how soon we can actually see him playing for the Dodgers?
That I don't know. I believe he was put on the list on, was it Monday?
Yeah, he's got about 7 more days, and he has to test negative probably a couple times.
3 times. I think it's 3 times. Yeah.
So probably earliest also would probably be the Angel series.
But
we don't know whether he's asymptomatic or he actually has symptoms.
No, that we don't know. They haven't made that public knowledge. And I believe I may be wrong. I don't want to say that either. I was about to say I think he's vaccinated, but I haven't heard.
I believe he is. He is.
Another Giants made another move.
Who did they acquire?
I thought, where was he at? Tony Watson, wasn't he with the Giants?
He was with the Reds, I believe.
Okay, well he's back with the Giants.
Look, I got to tell you, if I was the Show Pods and I was the Giants, I would load up on left-handers.
Yes.
And I think maybe that's why the Dodgers were looking for a right-hand bat. Because, again, the Dodgers still have the same problem. When we had John Hartung on the show, he mentioned it. You know, your local bartender, if he was left-handed, could get success against the Dodgers.
Right.
So those are smart moves by those teams. Just load up. Real quick, guys, did you guys hear the bulletin board material that Joe Musgrove gave?
I did not. What did Jojo do there?
Joe Musgrove, when they were asking about the moves that the Dodgers made, they said he doesn't care that they have enough because they know that they want it more than the Dodgers. So after that, I mean, if I was Dave Roberts, you got to print that out, right? And put that in the dugout and be just like, hey, this team says they want it more than us.
I'll be 100% honest. On paper, when you look at the 2 rosters, when healthy, it's not even fair. The Dodgers just currently blow them out of the water, even with where they're at. It's not fair.
Yeah, but you still got to play the game, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the other part, right? That's the other shoe that has to drop is you got to go out there and play the game.
I mean, who had Cody Bellinger hitting 150 in August?
Brian Kilpatrick. That's only because he hates everything Dodgers. I have to say, so someone threw a comment out here that was, but I don't know how we're going to re-sign all these players. We're so over the luxury tax that I really think Seager is walking after the season. So the Dodgers have made it super clear they're willing to go over the luxury tax threshold for the right guy. And we talked about this a little bit with Trevor Bauer when they acquired him. And they were willing to do that, right? But obviously that experiment has backfired a little bit because here we are. But regardless, the Dodgers have made it super clear they would be willing to go over that threshold for that. And as far as Gavin Lux goes, I'm just gonna go on the record and say I feel like he was a big trade chip today, and the fact that they didn't move him is one of those things where they probably didn't see anything out there that was worthwhile paying a premium for, if you will. Because I know they're high up on his bat, but they're not all that high up on his defense, and that's the issue they've been running into. But if the right package would have come across, I'm sure they would have made a deal for him. Same with Brewstar. I was told that Brewstar was a part of a lot of conversations for pieces, and it didn't happen. So, I'm not overly worried about the luxury tax threshold because ownership has made it clear they would be willing to pay that if they have the right roster.
Yeah, I think this is why it's so important that they have Turner in this deal, because Turner's making $13 million this year. Turner's going to be arbitration eligible next year.
1 more year, yeah.
So at this point, we can't. I mean, go back and listen to the podcast. We've talked about this many times with Corey Seager. The fact that he's a Boris client, it was going to be a tough negotiation. Now, the fact that he's been hurt for the majority of this year, I am very curious to see what happens these next 2 months. Because if Seager does go on a tear, it'll be good for the Dodgers, because then that means they're probably going to be winning games. They'll probably win the division. But it's going to rebuild his value, so to speak. So if negotiations get tough, having Turner, I think, makes it easier to walk away from Seager. And I know this will be a debate. I don't think Turner has the same power that Seager has, but Turner hits over 300.
Right.
And I'm curious to see, now that I'll be able to see him every day, how Turner is defensively, and also the fact that Turner can play center field. I know primarily he wants to play shortstop, but I think it's a good insurance policy to have in your back pocket, that if you can't work things out with Seager, that you can throw Turner out there next year.
Well, and we're going to be here for a few more minutes as some of these deals keep trickling in that were just filed. I think that them acquiring Trey Turner is for sure insurance, right? That's insurance because they there is still word that Corey may not resign. There's a lot of worry. Jorge Castillo has told us point blank on here that he doesn't think that Corey's going to stay here. So, you get Trey Turner for another year. It buys you a little bit of time if Corey decides to leave and go elsewhere, and you have Trey for a year. Because, at the end of the day, Trey Turner is also going to get crazy money when his time is up after 2022. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be here with the Dodgers, but, I know that's something that's on the table, right? But it buys you time because Corey's up this year. You still have a year where Trey can play there. And you know what? I feel like Trey is better defensively than Corey. We've talked about Corey's shakiness as far as defense goes. I think that's where Trey has him beat, is on his defense. And I know that's an appealing prospect, if you will, to the Dodgers and why they were so aggressive in going out and getting him. And I'll be 100% honest. When I text you guys that stuff, I was totally making a joke. I was like, there's no way this shit's going to happen. There's absolutely no way that the Los Angeles Dodgers go out and get both Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. And turns out that was garbage. That was absolutely garbage.
And one thing that we can't lose sight of, guys, is in terms of the luxury taxes, the money is going to be interesting next year only because Kershaw's a free agent, so we don't know what his contract is going to be like. Jansen's a free agent. We don't even know if he's going to be back. And if he is going to be back, is he going to be back at the same number that he's at right now? So,
not after you've been booing him, Juan. He's not coming back.
Yes, I'm the reason if Canley. Well, and here's the other thing that I want to pull. The fact that the Dodgers won't be able to to re-sign Corey Seager. These guys have to want to come back. You can throw a boatload of money to these guys, but if these guys don't want to come back for whatever reason, if they want to play closer to home or, who knows? Sometimes not all these decisions are made based on money. So that's just something to also just to take into consideration is we really don't know what the salary situation, the payroll is going to be like for the Dodgers because I'm assuming the Kershaw contract is going to be less than what it is right now, considering he's now up in age. So, the money. Bomb. What is it?
Rich Rodriguez goes to the Braves. That's a bomb in the sense that dude was coveted by quite a bit of people, and he goes to the Braves. I'm surprised that the Braves acquired him. So I wonder what they gave up.
So the Braves are going all in.
Yes, they are. And you know what? Good for them. I mean, they were a tough out last year. Let's not forget. They were
up 3-1. They were up 3-1.
So they're going for it. And I mean, in the current standings, as far as where they're at, the Braves are 4 back in a wide open division with the Mets didn't improve their pitching. The Phillies kind of improved their pitching, but the Phillies offensively, I'm still the jury's still out on them. And the Mets obviously improved their offense in getting Baez. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Javi Baez is a bad man. But after DeGrom and Stroman, what do you got?
Well, what's going to be really interesting is the Dodgers are going to play a big role in the National League East. The Dodgers get the Mets for 7 games in August, and then the Braves come here. So the Dodgers have to go to Philly. They have to go play the Phillies. So the Dodgers are going to play a role in who ends up winning the National League East. And the fact that the Braves are still trying, I think that's all very encouraging for baseball.
Credit to Elias Sports Bureau. 10 players who were All-Stars this year have been traded. Joey Gallo, Nelson Cruz, Kyle Gibson, Adam Frazier, Eduardo Escobar, Kyle Schwarber, who quietly moved, Max Scherzer, Craig Kimbrell, Trey Turner, and Chris Bryant. That's insane.
Yeah. I really hope that I hope that adding Scherzer and Turner really start to change things for these Dodgers because.
Hold on.
Oh
no. Well, Toribio just texted me. He said he couldn't join us, but I told him we're still on if he wants to pop in. So let me see what he says.
Okay, keep us posted. I agree with you, Juan. I think the overall impact of the Dodgers doing what they did is going to be huge. But listen, no matter how you go about it, the Dodgers went out and got the best available starting pitcher.
Right, which on paper should result into wins, right? But they just lost 2 out of 3 in San Francisco. And they lost 3 out of 4 here in LA against the Giants. And the show pods have been very successful. Sooner or later, these are the teams that you're going to be facing in the playoffs. You got to find a way to start beating them. And hopefully Scherzer will do them. Scherzer is a workhorse. That guy's going to give you innings. So hopefully that's going to help the bullpen too. I mean, the fact, I don't think we've said this enough, but the season that Buehler is having, and more importantly, that guy gives you innings. Almost, I think there's only been 1 start this year that he went less than 7.
Yeah, I mean, 1, and it was a loss if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so
his first loss in 39 starts, if I'm not mistaken either.
Yeah, but I'm worried about the health of the starting rotation. I cannot stress enough, Julio has not pitched this many innings in his career.
Well, and the other thing I was going to say is not only did they get the best starting pitcher, but they got Trey Turner. Trey Turner is a dynamic bat. I think his WAR is 6th or something like that in all of baseball for his position. I may be wrong on that. I'm not a sabermetric guy, but that's something I saw earlier. That's not something to scoff at by any stretch. Like you said, Trey has been hitting 300 for consistently, casually, if you will, and quietly, because who his teammates were Juan Soto and Bryce Harper for many years. And so I think Trey Turner is kind of the shot that everyone needs. Obviously Scherzer is a big time deal, but that offense for sure needs a shot in the arm. And I think Trey Turner might just be able to provide that. Obviously, we're working on trying to get Juan Toribio on. He can give us a little bit more insight. Hopefully, he can join us here in the next few minutes. But these deals trickle in. Let's not forget. The grand scheme of things, Los Angeles sports fandom yesterday had a hell of a day. The Dodgers acquired Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, and then the Los Angeles Lakers acquire Russell Westbrook. That's still insane.
Yes, but here's the deal with the Westbrook thing. I'm going to like that trade a lot better if come August 6th, they can flip that into Buddy Hield. Because if you have Buddy Hield with Westbrook, then I would feel a lot better.
Right. As you know, I do ESPN NBA stuff. I have been told that the Lakers are not done.
Okay.
And Buddy Hield is in Los Angeles. He was in Los Angeles yesterday.
Yeah, so if that happens, then yeah, I'll feel much better. But going back to the Dodgers, guys, so where are we putting Turner in this lineup? Because Mookie's coming back. Mookie's coming back on Sunday. So do you go Mookie, then Turner? Do you put then the other Turner, Justin Turner, and then Max Muncy?
That's a great problem to have.
Right?
no matter how you look at it. By the way, MLB Tonight is showing the moment when Chris Bryant got the phone call that he was traded, and obviously very emotional because he's been there from the start. That's who brought him up. But man, I have a feeling that they're gonna stick him in. Probably. Here's the thing about that lineup now, man. You could put him at 5 or 6, and you're still good.
Well, I'm just saying, if you have Mookie and Trey Turner as your 1-2,
yeah.
This is what you're talking about. You're gonna have Seager 5th, Bellinger 6th, and then you're gonna make AJ Pollock either bat 7th or 8th. AJ Pollock right now is on a tear.
Yeah.
And then you have Will Smith either 7th or 8th. And Turner really stretches out this lineup if these guys can start doing what they were supposed to do, right? I'm curious to see what Seager looks like.
Well, and if with Corey being activated today, that's interesting to see because where's Trey going to play, right?
Yeah.
It gives them a couple days to or at least until next Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, if I counted the days right. I may be wrong. Maybe next Friday, for him to be activated off of the COVID list, to come back and for them to kind of figure out their lineup. But you know what? That's a fantastic problem to have with having. Hey, where are we going to plug Trey Turner in our already preposterous lineup?
And then I think,
yes, sir. Real quick. So Toribio said he's got a couple things to do first, but I'm trying to see how long it's going to take him. I told him if he could get here within the next 10 minutes, we can do it. But let me see what he says.
No worries. Thank you. I honestly think, if they put him, and someone pointed out, the Dodgers acquired Danny Duffy. And there's another quiet move, Billy McKinstry. So there's the Dodgers made moves, right? What I'm curious to is to where they are going to stick Trey. If they don't stick him at the top of the lineup, and if they stick him towards the end, that's still, they're giving someone insurance, whether it's Muncy, whether it's Pollock, like you said. That's he could even give insurance to JT even at this point. And again, even the flip side of that is where's Corey going to hit?
Yeah, these are all good problems to have if these guys start playing now the way they normally play in a season, right? If Mookie comes back, And it's not the Mookie that we were seeing at the beginning of the second half, but it's more the Mookie that we were seeing in the first half.
Right.
If Bellinger is still not coming out of it, I mean, if Bellinger is still swinging through high fastballs, I mean, we're going to have the same problem. And that's what I'm saying. It's like you can't sit there. This is what you can't account for, right? On paper, you say the same thing. On paper, this team is a super team. It's ridiculous. They should be dominating, but they're not performing. You can't factor in for underperformance.
No, and I mean, and even at that, it's I mean, with where they are at, I'm trying to find one thing with this lineup.
So probably no go on Toribio. Probably another 30 minutes. So.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. I mean, even with, I mean, here's the other thing is that we haven't even talked about yet is where is Scherzer going to start? And what I mean by that is, so let's, assuming that they stay the course and they make the postseason, right? So you have Walker start game 1, or do you have Scherzer or Kershaw start game 1? You know what I mean?
No, to me, it's Buehler starting game 1 because he is your best postseason pitcher.
Right.
And I would put Scherzer 2, Kershaw 3, and Julio 4.
Well, and again, that's even before we even talk about Danny Duffy.
I mean, Danny Duffy, if once we get to the postseason, if they get to a series long enough, Duffy is going to be a relief option.
Right.
For me, your top 4 starters, and that's the thing. The bullpen's going to get much stronger in the postseason because, especially in that first round, that division series, I expect to see Julio out of the bullpen in that division series.
You know what's insane is the Dodgers are everything is indicating that they're about to lose Trevor Bauer, right? But they go out and get Max Scherzer. And I mean, and all credit in the world to this front office for being aggressive, because I mean they went out and got the best available that they could for all things considered, and this is still a fantastic problem to have. Joaquim Soria is heading to the Toronto Blue Jays from Arizona.
Look at the Blue Jays, man.
Yeah.
The Blue Jays.
Quietly, trying to turn something into nothing, if you will.
Yeah.
Or rather, nothing into something. And, I mean, listen, the one thing that I do... And by the way, the Blue Jays are back in Toronto, so good for them. They get to do all that stuff in front of their home crowd at Rogers Center. It's interesting to see how just overall, just these moves are still insane. As we begin to wrap up, we're it sounds like the majority of the deals, I would say 80% of them that have transpired have dropped. I'm sure there'll be some more trickling out. So please follow Dodgers Beat at Dodgers Beat for more of that stuff. I'm still, that my general takeaway from that Dodgers deal, the Dodgers keep putting themselves in a position to have embarrassment of riches, and they do it in a way that it doesn't deplete the organization, and there's no other front office that does that.
Yeah, that's to me the biggest takeaway was the fact that they were able to get Scherzer and Turner, and what they gave up to get those two guys. It just the deferrals, and maybe we're going to have more details as the day progresses. I think the deferrals probably played a huge factor, because seeing what other teams had to pay to get other people, like what you say, Alonso, Andrew Fleesman. Maybe I should just start wearing a hat that just says AF to pay honor. So when will the Andrew Friedman statue be erected? And is it justified for me to have a conniption if an Andrew Friedman statue goes up before a Valenzuela statue?
So to the latter, I feel like they're right there because Friedman brought a championship and he made all the moves. So, I mean, it's right there, right?
Valenzuela brought a championship.
No, not to disrespect what Fernando did at all.
Why do you hate Fernando Valenzuela, Alonso?
I don't hate him. What are you going on about? What are you fucking talking about, Ron? Like, what is wrong with you? How many beers have we had? We haven't even been on the air that
long. So just a little tidbit from Toribio. He said Dodgers made a crap load of calls, but they were probably asking for the whole farm for some of these moves.
No,
Well, you had said earlier, right? The Cubs were asking for Miller and Pepio, right?
Yeah.
No, and you know what? I mean, good on the Dodgers for kind of sticking to their guns to not move all of that depth, right? That was incredibly loud, and I was not expecting. But I mean, good on the Dodgers for sticking to their guns and not giving up the whole farm for just about everyone. So I mean, good on them. Let's see, the D-backs agree. Oh no, that's another bit. But I mean, again, the biggest takeaway for me, aside from the fact that the blockbuster of all blockbusters, the kind of way that you expect a blockbuster to go down, the Dodgers held on to everyone except Keibert and JoJo, and we've been talking for a while now about Keibert, right? That he was expendable because he couldn't break through to this roster. Even with the amount of bombs that he was hitting in AAA, he still couldn't break through to this roster. So it was for sure, it was just an attrition thing because at some point they were going to move on from him. And now we can say it officially that the Los Angeles Dodgers have acquired Max Scherzer and Trey Turner for Keibert Ruiz, Josiah Gray, and 2 other minor leaguers. And those minor leaguers are not the top end of the farm. And that's still insane to say.
Yeah, good times.
Well, on that note, I feel like we're gonna wrap this guy up. Keep, like I said, please follow at Dodgers Beat. Please follow at Bleed Los Podcast. That was a fun deadline. That was a good one.
Yeah, a lot of moves.
Our greatest apologies to Juan Toribio for not being able to get to him. That's called a bump. If you don't know what that is, then I'm sorry. But Juan, we appreciate you passing info on to us, even though you couldn't join us. The Los Angeles Dodgers acquire Max Scherzer and Trey Turner with the blockbuster of all blockbusters. And real quick before we go, the reason I feel like it doesn't feel like a blockbuster of all blockbusters is because of the crazy trades that the Dodgers have done over the years with Mookie Betts, with Adrian Gonzalez. And I mean, for me, this is still insane because they have Albert Pujols, they have Max Scherzer, they have Cody Bellinger, and then they have Clayton Kershaw, all in that damn clubhouse. And then they have Mookie Betts, all in that damn clubhouse. That's still, I can't even wrap my head around that clubhouse.
Yeah, hopefully now they can just get healthy, and most importantly, they need to start performing.
Yes, and today apparently is what we're being told is that Corey Seager is going to be activated today. So that, I mean, again, another problem for that front office and for Dodgers management to get everyone playing time. And then, we can't forget about the GOAT, Chris Taylor. Chris Taylor's still going out there and doing the damn thing. And yeah, I mean, it's a great time to be a Dodger fan. I'm stoked about it. The Dodgers went out and did the thing, and they didn't give up hardly a crazy amount of assets. So, I mean, all things considered, I feel like it's a dub either way for the Dodgers. But on that note, it's your boys Alonso and Juan with the babyface gimmick in the sky, Roger. We drop podcasts every Monday. Our handle is at the Bleed Los Podcast. Please give it a follow. Go check out our episodes. And like I said, on Monday we're dropping one that's going to be of interest to every Dodger fan because we do a deep dive with the Astro scandal. But it isn't myself and Juan that do that. We are joined. But can I tell them who we're joined by or no?
Yeah.
We're joined by Andy Martino, who wrote the book Cheated, the inside story of the Astro scandal. If you want to listen to it, go listen to it on Audible or wherever you get your audiobooks, or as Roger called it, the library. And it's a great book. Juan and I both read it. I highly recommend it, especially if you're as pissed off with the Astros as we are, because it gives you a little bit more of an insight as to what's transpired. And Andy was a great interview. And I think all Dodger fans are going to be super interested to hear that. Some are not going to be happy with all the content, as we learned after we finished it. But it's a very transparent look into what happened there, especially as the Astros come to town next week. So we'll drop that for you on Monday. But on that note, thank you for watching. Go Dodgers, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.